Hi, I'm Hayley Victoria and welcome back to my crime and policing channel. In today's session we're looking at forensic toxicology and we're linking it to a case. So we've done toxicology before. That's when we look and analyse, identify and quantify toxins in people's bodies, such as poisons, drugs, alcohol, stuff like that. Today we're looking at poison. And we're going to start by delving into a Halloween crime because 'tis the season. And in Halloween, a lot of the weirdos come out. And I don't just mean us goths. I mean, we get some serious freaky stuff happening. Maybe it's the moon, I don't know. But yeah, a lot of freaky stuff goes down. A lot of crimes are committed. Some of the best horror films that are Halloween, right? I'm going to go watch one of those tomorrow at the cinema. I'm not going to say what it is, no spoilers. So yeah, let's start. We're going to go back to 1974. So 1974, I wasn't alive back then. But I imagine it was a lot nicer, you know, a lot less crime, the streets were nice, in your neighbourhood, you could leave your doors unlocked, all those kind of things that you wish you could still do now, right? Well, we're in Deer Park in Texas, so we're going to the United States for this case in 1974. So it was a Halloween like every Halloween always is for two families. So there were the OBriens and the Bateses, they were next door neighbours, and they both had young children and, you know, they were a really nice family. So the OBriens, the father, Ronald OBrien, he was a deacon at the local church. He was an optician. So, you know, he got a fairly good job. He's a deacon at the church. He even sang in the choir. These are like, you know, upstanding community members. And the children were well liked and well loved. It was a really nice neighbourhood with really nice people, right? Well, there's something wrong in this neighbourhood, and that night tragically took the life of one of the children in this party. So after dinner at the Bates' house, Ronald and his children Elizabeth and Timothy and the Bates children all went trick-or-treating together. So in America, Halloween is huge, right? Even bigger than it is over here. It's massive. Everyone loves it. I mean, we like Halloween in England, by the way, too. But we don't go quite to town like you guys do in the States. But we still enjoy it over here, you know, but in America it's massive. I've seen the videos and things, and I really want to come to the States, by the way, for Halloween because it does look incredible. I did Vegas once a couple of years ago at Halloween and that was insane, so I'd love to see what it's like in a proper community. Yeah, so it's Halloween, the kids want to go trick-or-treating, they're so excited about it because it's the one night of the year where you can eat as much sweets, as much candy as you want. You can go nuts on that stuff, right? So yeah, the kids were so excited, they all went out trick-or-treating. So there they're going house to house, collecting loads of sweets or candy, shoving it into their little bags, and off they are to the next house. It's a lovely time of year where lots of stuff's happening, lots of festivity, all the kids are happy. It's just a lovely thing, especially in a nice community like there was in Deer Park in Texas. There was one house, however, where the families went up to it, and Mr. Bates waited at the end of the street while Ronald O'Brien and all the kids went to the door. So, you know, like, I'll take this one, don't worry about it. Went to the door, knocked on the door, there's nobody in. So the kids ran back down as if to go to the next house. Then Ronald walked down a little bit later and he's like, he's got like 5 bags of Pixie Stix. So Pixie Stix are these like tubes, very thin cylindrical tubes just full of sugar, powdered sugar. I've seen them on Toddlers and Tiaras where these kids just nick these Pixie Stix and they're wired. So it's just sugar in these Pixie Stix. So he got 5 packets of these Pixie Stix and he said to his mate, Mr. Bates, yeah, they weren't there and on time. So the kids had already left by the time the people came to the door with these. But they told me to give them to the kids. Oh, cool. And not long after it started chucking it down, it was raining and they were like, let's call it a night, guys. And they went home. So getting ready for bed, little Timothy, Timothy O'Brien was like, Dad, please, can I have one more sweet? Just one more sweetie, please. And his dad was like, yeah, sure. He opened up the packet of Pixie Stix and gave him a Pixie Stick. Well, he opened it up for him, gave it to him, and pretty much straight away, little Timothy he's like hunching over and he's in agony, absolute agony. And he's being violently sick, he's having seizures, he's convulsing, he's being sick. And less than an hour later, Timothy had been pronounced dead. So in the ambulance on the way to the hospital, he'd been pronounced dead. Massive investigation ensues, right? So instantly the police were like, what's happened? And Ronald O'Brien's like, I gave him this pixie stick and that was it. He's just vomiting, he's convulsing, he's gone. So immediately the police found all these pixie sticks. So luckily, none of the other children in that party had taken any of these pixie sticks. None of them had eaten any. And when they did an autopsy on little Timothy, they found enough cyanide in his body to kill 2 adults that had come from these sticks. When they analysed them, remember we're looking at forensic toxicology, they found enough cyanide, potassium cyanide, to kill 2 adults per stick. That's a lot of cyanide. None of the other children were affected, like I said, but poor Timothy did lose his life that night. Police were searching for this mad candy killer, the candy man, they were saying, who'd been poisoning children at Halloween. So this massive thing ensues, and Ronald's like, I can't remember which house it was. We went to so many, I cannot remember. The police were like, well, you need to start remembering because someone's killed a child, your son. They went for a walk around the area with the police, and he's like, oh, it was that one. That was the house there, definitely. Well, the police found Courtney Melvin, who lived at that house. And now Courtney had a solid gold alibi. Courtney wasn't there. Courtney was at work as an air traffic controller until 11 p.m. that night. Not there when Ronald said he was. Oh dear. Well, the police did a lot of other investigations as well, and they discovered that Ronald O'Brien was actually in £78,000 worth of debt, which was surprising, right? This upstanding pillar of the community kind of guy. And also, interestingly, in January of that year, he'd taken out $10,000 of life insurance on each of his children. In September of that year, he upped it by another 20 grand. And then just days before Halloween, he upped it again by another £20,000. Starting to look a bit fishy, isn't it? Well, the day after Timothy had died, his father called the insurance company to ask about the payment. That's not grieving dad, is it? That's freaky. That's messed up, right? So, yeah, the police were having none of it. Naturally, they arrested him for the murder of his own son. He protested his innocence the entire time, but a jury took just 46 minutes to convict him of the murder of his own son, and he was sentenced to death by lethal injection, which happened on March the 30th in 1984, so a long time afterwards. But yeah, so that's the Candyman killer, is Ronald O'Brien, who fatally poisoned his own child with a poisoned pixie stick. Who knows what might have happened if the other children had taken those as well. Doesn't bear thinking about, but it is the season of Halloween. If you are going trick-or-treating, please be careful. And it's the oldest saying in the book, right? But don't take sweets from strangers. And if you are collecting sweets for your kids when you go out, make sure they're in wrappers, like properly wrapped sweets. I know the pixie stick was like, you know, he closed it himself, but make sure they're proper sweets and proper wrapped. Or, you know, just don't use poison on people, guys. Just try and have a fun time without hurting people. But have a great Halloween. Stay safe. Don't commit any crimes, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Hi, I'm Hayley Victoria, and welcome back to my crime and policing channel. In today's session, we are looking at how evidence has helped solve some crimes committed at Halloween. I don't always walk around in jumpers like this. Okay, maybe I do. But anyway, it's Halloween. We're looking at some real crimes committed around Halloween, but more importantly, how evidence has helped to convict some seriously bad eggs. The first crime we're going to talk about is the murder of Peter Fabiano. That's it, Peter Fabiano. Now, Peter was 35. He owned 2 successful salons in LA. He was married to Betty, and they had 2 children from her previous relationship. Sounds like a pretty sweet deal, right? Well, one day, a lady came into one of the salons called Joan Rabel. Now, Joan was like recently divorced, a successful journalist, by the way, before she ended up in this salon. And she formed a very close friendship with Peter's wife, Betty. Very close. In fact, the papers said it was abnormal, which in 1957 means homosexual. So they were part of the LGBTQ+ family, And, you know, Peter found out about this and he was not impressed, as you can imagine, right? So he had it out with Betty, and Betty's like, you know, I'm really sorry. Please, let's give it another go. Let's try and make it work. And Peter's like, okay, but you're not seeing that woman ever again. She was like, okay, cool. So Betty told Joan, you know, it is off. I'm trying to make it work with my husband. Sorry, but we can't have any contact. She wasn't happy. Joan, not Betty. Joan really was not happy. Betty, meanwhile, was trying to make things work with a husband and a family and the salons, you know. Sorry and all that, let's make a fresh start of it. But Joan, like I said, was not happy. She made friends with a lady called Goldin Pizer. I think that's how you pronounce it. Now, Goldin had also been recently divorced from her husband and was also in the closet for a long, long time. That means that she was also homosexual, but hiding under a guise that she was not. Bear in mind, it's 1957, right? People weren't all that accepting back then. So Goldin and Joan made fast friends, gossiping, having dinner, you know, having a coffee and stuff like that. And quite quickly, Goldin became enamoured with Joan. Joan had really done a number on her, really manipulative. And she was telling her how upset she was about her friend Betty and how she got this evil husband and the only thing they could do to save her would be to kill him. I mean, right about now you'd be like, this is not a good friend to be with, right? But not Goldin. She was like, okay. Then they got a 38 Smith & Wesson gun, and it was Halloween night in 1957. They were outside the house of Betty and Peter, and all the lights had just gone out. The trick-or-treaters had been around all night, so in America, like, trick-or-treating's huge, isn't it, right? Peter and Betty had gone to bed, the kids were in bed, they heard a knock at the door. Oh God, thought Peter, gotta get out of bed. Went downstairs, got his bowl of sweets, or candy, opened the door, and this is where Betty said she heard a deep voice, and then obviously a bang, a gunshot. She went downstairs, obviously like, what the heck is going on? And there Peter was, bleeding out. She was like, oh my God! She went to the next door neighbour, who was a police officer, and they got him to Sun Valley Hospital, where he was later pronounced dead. He bled out, he died. Yeah, and that's what happened that night. There was only one witness, who was a teenager, and they said they saw a car speeding off, but not really much else. And there were no bullet casings left at the scene. However, and I love these people, there was a tip-off to the police a couple of weeks later about the storage locker where the gun had been hidden by Goldin Pizer and Joan Rabel. They found the gun. Guess what? It was a match to the one that had shot and killed Peter. Oh dear, Goldin. The tip-off also pointed out to Goldin Pizer's house. As soon as he got there, she was like, do you know what? I'm glad to get it off my mind. Yeah, it was me. But I had to, because Joan said, we've got to save a friend. And Joan was like, I had to save my friend from this evil man. 1957, right? They thought just because they were part of the LGBTQ family that they were insane. And they pled insanity to the pleas. They were both charged with second-degree murder and served like 5 years in prison. But that was all they served, because back in those days, they didn't believe that women who were homosexual had the mental capacity to do things like that. Really? Anyway, yeah, so that's a crime that was committed at Halloween and was solved using evidence. So they used like a witness statement for the tip-off. They used the evidence found with the gun, and yeah, and obviously the confession from Goldin when they picked her up. Happy Halloween! Hi, I'm Hayley Victoria and welcome back to my Crime and Policing channel. In today's session, we are continuing our investigation into crimes committed at Halloween and how evidence has helped secure convictions of those responsible for them. Today's case is the case of Eric Copple. Now, in 2004, Eric Copple murdered 2 of 3 housemates. They were called Leslie Mazzara and Adrienne Insona. The 3rd housemate, Lauren Mianza, thankfully escaped. Let's have a look at their case. So it was Halloween night 2004 and 3 housemates, Leslie, Adrienne and Lauren, were all having a bit of a Halloween thing. They were handing out lots of treats to trick-or-treaters, but by about 11 PM they went to bed, you know. Trick-or-treaters had finished. They were like, oh my God, there's only so many sweets you can eat, right? So So they went to bed about 11 p.m. Not long after, Lauren said she heard the dog growling, and she was like, oh, that's unusual. I'm a bit spooked out now, not gonna lie. And then somebody broke into the house and made their way straight upstairs. Now Lauren's bedroom was downstairs, and she was very, very quiet. So she heard something happening upstairs, and then she heard a friend screaming. And not like, you know, I found a spider in my room screaming, like really screaming. And she hid because she was petrified. When she was confident that whoever was doing this had left the house, she tentatively left the room and found her friends, multiple stab wounds, dead. And she left the house, went straight to authorities, and then they began their investigations. They collected 218 DNA samples at this time. You know, DNA back in 2004 was still only kind of, you know, being used properly. Although it did, you know, we started in the 80s and stuff like that. But anyway, I'm going off on one. Yeah, so Lauren thankfully escaped. Police investigators at the time found some cigarette butts outside. These were quite specific. They were called Camel Turkish Gold. I've never even heard of that. I don't know if it's an American cigarette brand or what. And they asked Lauren, did anybody smoke in the house? And she's like, no. They asked her if she knew anybody that smoked. And she was like, oh, yeah, our friend Lily, her boyfriend smokes. He helped us move in. Now, Lily was Eric's ex-fiancée at that time. So she was also Adrian's best friend. I don't know, maybe he thought that Adrian and the other girls had convinced Lily to break up with him. I don't know. They did later reconcile, by the way, and get married before she realised he was a murderer. And he even attended the funeral of the girls that had died. Sicko. Anyway, so they found these cigarette butts and they did a DNA analysis on the DNA that was left on the cigarette butts on the ends of them. They found from this test that the person likely to have used these cigarettes would have blue or green eyes, fair hair, and a northwestern European skin colour. So they'd look like, you know, white, blue or green eyes and fair hair. And this cigarette brand is quite specific, isn't it? Presented with that information, I mean, it was everywhere. It had been released everywhere to help investigations. Eric turned himself in and admitted to the crimes. It didn't even have a motive. It didn't even give a motive. But, you know, maybe, I'm just assuming here, he was a little bit annoyed that Lily had dumped him. Well, a lot annoyed. And maybe he blamed the girls for that. But yeah, the evidence there that helped secure that conviction was DNA found on the cigarette butt at the time. Interesting stuff, right? And it was dark, so Lauren said she didn't actually get a good look at the offender because he ran off. So yeah, evidence is everywhere. And you're leaving stuff like that behind, and it's a good opportunity to collect forensic evidence that's been in somebody's mouth. There you go. Happy Halloween!